Hi everyone, my name is Barbara. Welcome to my channel Right in the Woods, where I share my love of journaling, especially therapeutic journaling and stationery. Now I'm thinking that the majority of the people that will first find this channel are new to stationery, so I thought I'd do a few Stationery 101 videos just to introduce you to some information about this industry and the things that are in it, and helpful tips, things that I would have liked to know when I first got into stationery. It is huge. I mean, there's always been stationery stores, but the industry has grown so much, and there's so much more to it than I remember from years and years ago. So, some helpful tips. First of all, I want you to know that I do not edit videos, at least not yet. So if you need to put me on 2 times speed to get through this, totally understand. But I also want to just feel like we're chatting, so no editing as of yet. So today's Stationery 101 is dealing with the notebooks. We're going to talk about sizing, the paper that's in them, and then a few other tips that might be helpful for you as you get started in your stationery notebook journal. So let's start with sizing. There is a company, an organization called ISO, International Standardization Organization, that has put sizing on paper. So it's just generally used across the board for stationery. So it's interesting because I had a hard time remembering what it meant when they'd say, oh, that's an A5. So that's an ISO indicator of a size, A5. So they're not all named that would make it seem easy. So an A5, this is an A5, which is 5.8 by 8.3, or generally almost 6 inches by 8 inches, because I don't know about you, people start saying numbers and they just kind of fall right out of my head. But it is typically like a book size. So almost 6 inches by 8 inches, a little over 8 inches. Most standard notebook out there, A5, they're very popular. Then there's B5, okay? So I always think as B as bigger. So anytime you have a B, it's going to be bigger than the A, all right? So this is a B5, and it is 6.83 inches by 9.84 inches, or almost 7 inches by almost 10 inches, all right? Not quite as big as a letter size. This size we are used to. It's a notebook size, 8.5 by 11, copy paper. Typical notebooks are letter size, 8.5 by 11. And in the notebook industry, it is called letter size. All right. So letter size, B5, which is a little bigger than the A5, which is about the size of a book you'd find in a bookstore or the library. So those are the big ones. There are more sizes. There's even a bigger size than these, but most of the time those are art books or sketchbooks. We're not going to talk about those. We're just talking about normal, typical notebook sizes. Then there's the smaller versions. All right. Let's start with this one. This is a B, but it's a B6. So you'd think because the number is higher, it would be bigger than the B5s, but it's not. So think 6 as smaller. 6 as smaller. So this is a B6. The B6s are 5 by 7. No point anythings. They are 5 by 7. All right. If you have a Kindle, very close to the size of a Kindle. This is another nice size. If the bigger sizes overwhelm you, try a B6. All right. It's a nice handy size. Then there's an A6, which I do not have, and not all notebook companies make A6s, but if you happen to see it, it's a little bit small. I just cut a piece of paper to fit this size. It's a little bit smaller than the B. Remember, B's are bigger, right? So this would be an A6. And the actual size of these are 4.1 by 5.8, or just over 4 inches and almost 6 inches, all right? This size, however, is popular, and it is a pocket notebook, and it's actually called that, a pocket notebook. So, obviously, it could fit in your pocket. And these are 3.5 by 5.5 inches. 3.5 by 5.5 inches. Pocket notebooks. All right. So remember, B's are always bigger, whether it's a 5 or a 6. All right. And that the 6s are smaller than the 5s. Oh, goodness. Just doesn't make sense, but that's the way it is. So A5s, B5s, B6, A6. All right, so those are notebook sizes. Just some hints when you're if you're out looking for one and you want a specific size, those are the sizes you're going to hear about. So, all right, all these notebooks are A5. So again, these are A5 notebooks. But we're going to talk about what your paper can be inside your notebooks. All right. So first of all, easy peasy. Sometimes you can have, just like we are normal or lined pages. All right. Used to that, lined pages. Then there's something called dot grid. All right. If you can see, a grid made with dots. All right. And the size of the boxes that are made with the grid can vary. And then there's actual gridded paper. We would probably have called this graph paper, but it's called grid paper. So dot grid and then just grid paper, which actually shows the lines. Right now, also, how apparent these lines show up on your paper is also different from company to company. So if you want to be able to see your lines, check it out. Make sure you can see the lines. And again, you can choose a different box size. This one's pretty small. All right. Now, usually we use graph paper like engineering or something like that, sketching out plans or whatever. But it's nice to have these to, draw lines. Your writing can get nice and even with small boxes like this. You could have, if you have tiny writing, you might like a grid notebook like this. All right. So then let's talk about the kind of paper that is inside notebooks. Again, there's a term called GSM, which stands for grams per meter, which indicates the weight and the thickness of the paper. So generally, the higher the GSM, the thicker the paper. Usually, higher quality paper is a little thicker. Also, the thicker the paper, the more it becomes like you're able to do like arts and stuff with it, like watercolors and acrylic painting and things like that. So, just for an example, most notebooks, like school notebooks, are 60 to 80 GSM. So you're probably familiar with notebook paper, just regular old notebook paper, 60 to 80 GSMs. A piece of cardstock, which you're probably also, have some knowledge of, is 300 GSMs. So you can see that's much thicker. The GSM is higher. So why is this important? It's important because when you're journaling, you might want to try different pens, and some pens and inks may bleed through the pages. It is generally thought that anything from like 90 to 120 GSMs is good for most pen inks. All right. Fountain pen inks probably even higher. So, and then if you're going to do watercolor and mixed media, the higher the better as well. All right, and I'm going to give you some examples of that. So again, fountain pens, usually 100 to 120 are good for that. So somewhere in that range, higher, 100 to 120, better for pens. Even higher is probably better for fountain pens, with the exception of Tomoe River paper, all right, which has been figured out by Japan, and it is somehow they have weaved together the paper fibers enough to get a very thin piece of paper and not have most of your fountain pen inks or markers bleed through the paper, right? And the GSM on this is called Tomoe River paper. That's one of the most popular. Tomoe River paper. Is only 52 GSMs, which is just astounds me. All right, 52 GSMs. It's very thin. So I'd almost consider this like Bible paper. But if you ever want to try it, I highly recommend it. It is so fun to write on. It is so smooth. Genius for coming up with this 52 GSM paper. The only time I've ever had problems with like certain pens that bleed are Sharpies. So it's always a good idea to test out your notebooks when you get them with different types of pens. Like in the back of your book, do a little testing of your pen to see if it will bleed through or ghost onto the other side of your page. So if you're on the last page, you could write on here and then look over here and see if it's bleeding through. And if it does, don't use that pen in your notebook. All right. But I just, I would, if you highly recommend trying Tomoe River paper. It's pretty fun. All right. So just so you have an idea, the paper that is in these albums, these notebooks, which I showed you, which are all from Archer and Olive, and all this information will be put in the comments below, in the information below. Their paper is 160 GSM. That's pretty high, 160, because Archer and Olive would like people to be able to do art in here, to do watercolor or use all kinds of different kind of markers and things. I still, again, the only one I've ever had problems with are Sharpies in here. But I'm not a pen expert. But I would test in the back of your notebook, even Archer and Olive, your pens, just to make sure that they're not going to bleed through or ghost through. All right. So that's one of the reasons I really like Archer and Olive, because of the weight of their paper. But doesn't feel like cardstock. It just feels like a regular paper. All right. So let's talk about types of album bindings. Of course, I've been showing you all the ones that are bound up like books. These are glued and sewn. The nice part about that is they will lie flat. Pretty much no matter where I open them, it'll lie flat so that I can journal in these very nicely. All right. Most of the notebooks that you will find out there in stationery stores are lie flat. Right? The ones that aren't particularly lie flat are like the ring ones. There are 6-ring notebooks, which I don't have one to show you, but they're just like 3-ring but smaller with 6 rings. And those are nice because they can be versatile. However, when you're writing that, let's say this had the rings in it, it can get in the way of your writing with your hand. So, but I have seen people turn it so that the rings are in the middle and they write horizontally. Okay, so that's one way. If you like the ring binding system, then you can always turn it so you're writing horizontally. There are other versions of albums or notebooks that are very versatile. This was, and still is, one of my favorites, the disc bound type system. So on these, everything can come apart so that you can change your covers, you can add paper, you can get a punch that will punch these kind of holes, so you can add anything to these notebooks. Plus, a lot of these disc bound ones have dividers that you can get and pockets, and just like a 3-ring notebook. Again, well, the nice thing about this compared to like a ring notebook, 6 or 3, is that you can turn it over and have one page that you can write on. However, you may still find that these get in the way. So again, you can always turn it so you're writing horizontally. Again, this company this notebook that I'm showing here is from Levenger. I will also put this in the information for you. One of my favorite companies. I still love their notebooks. And their paper, just in case you want to know, is 100 GSM. Also very nice to write on. All right. Of course, we still have wire bindings. The only thing I would say about wire bindings is check how thick those wires are, because if you remember in school, we used to have the wire bindings. They'd be falling apart by the end of the year. So just watch the weight of the wire that they use for that. And then the other notebook system, it's actually a whole system, and it is a popular size, very popular size. It's like a whole industry of itself, okay? As what's called traveler's notebooks. So this particular notebook is 4 by 3.33 by 8 by 8.25. So just over 4 inches, just a little over 8 inches. Thin and skinny. All right. Very popular traveler's notebooks. Here's what you should know. There is a company called the Traveler's Notebook, Traveler's Company, and they specialize in traveler's notebooks. I think they even may have created them decades ago. And a lot of the Traveler's Company notebooks have Tomoe River paper in them. And these come in all kinds of, you can get the dock grid, nothing, plain old paper lined, the gridded paper. You can get watercolor paper. So these come in all sorts of things. This happens to be a plain one. It just has like the craft paper cover. And it's thick, but not like cardboard thick. And then pages. It is sewn together. All right, but it'll still open and lie nice and flat. You have to work with it a little bit, but it'll open and lie nice and flat for your writing. People use these for all kinds of things, memory journaling, planners, everything. So it is a popular size because it's easy to carry around. Now you can, and they do come in different sizes. So you can find, this is a B6, and the cover's decorated. So you can find different sizes and covers that are not so plain if you would like. And again, this one is hand stitched or stitched, and this one happens to be dock grid. I don't know if you can see that, but it's dock grid paper. So they'll come in different sizes. The binding for this is different. All right. So usually traveler's notebooks, they're leather. I'm sure you've seen these, but this is a whole system. So what makes it a traveler's notebook system is the fact that there are bands that are inside that you slip the notebooks in. All right. So you can get these covers, traveler's notebook covers, with more than one band. You can add bands. This band that I just put that notebook in, I happen to add. This is on one of the bands that are in, that came with the notebook. You can get other kinds of accessories for them. But they were initially made to be something you could travel with, actually travel with. So they are compact, easy to carry around. I do use one of these when I travel. So again, the biggest thing that makes this a traveler's notebook is this binding with this slip-in notebooks that you put in the elastic. Now, they do make hardcover traveler's notebooks. So this is another Archer and Olive, but it's a nice thick journal. This actually, and this is one of the books that I've taken on trips, will fit in here. Right, so you just slip a regular notebook in these as well. And again, they come in different sizes. All right, this one is a bit thick. If I was gonna, when I go on a trip, I usually don't have the excess stuff in here. And I get rid of that. But it still works. All right. So traveler's notebooks are a whole system. You can find all kinds of things for traveler's notebooks. I would highly recommend trying one of these out. Again, if these big ones are just overwhelming to you, try a traveler's notebook. You'll go through this pretty quickly and be able to carry it around with you. All right, I think that's pretty much it for some helpful tips on notebook sizes and the paper and some different forms of notebooks. Um, Last tip I have for you is if you find a notebook that you like, check and you want a cover for it. Now, I have never needed covers for my Archer and Olive ones. I don't know why, they stay pretty clean. But some of these paper ones, like you saw, I had a plastic cover on this one. I like to have covers on them just to protect them a bit more, because if I spilled anything on this cover, which is only paper, it would get warped. However, if I spilled something on an Archer and Olive cover, it probably wouldn't be the best thing for it either, but I could wipe it up pretty fast and it would probably fare better than a papered covered notebook. So again, if you find a notebook you like and you want a cover for it, see if that company sells the covers, the plastic covers or clear covers or any other kind of cover that you want, because there's lots of them out there, for that notebook, because not every company makes the same A5 size, even though it's standardized. Sometimes you will find that the A size in one company is different than the A size in another company. So if you want a cover, check to see if they make covers for them. There is a woman on Etsy that if you give her your notebook sizes, dimensions, and thickness, because that's usually what's the different on some notebooks is how thick they are, she will make you a cover. They are kind of pricey. I've only had to do it once because I just couldn't find a cover to fit one of the notebooks I had. And but she's there and she's available if you ever want a cover and you can't seem to find one from that same company. All right, I hope all that made sense. Please, if you have any questions, don't feel silly. Put them in the comments. I always wish I had somebody I could ask some questions to when I was first learning about all of this. You can find journal sizes, like cheat sheets, on the web if you need one. I had to have one on my desk when I was placing orders for journals because I couldn't remember if the B was bigger, yes, or if the 5 was bigger than the 6. No, 6 is smaller. So there's cheat sheets out there if you need them. Again, leave me any questions. Nothing is too small. There's no silly questions. All right. And again, if you'd like to subscribe and follow along, of course, I'd love that. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. It just helps it to get out there. Keep watching. I'll probably do a couple more Stationery 101 videos along with a plethora of other things. It's going to be quite the mix of things I have planned for this channel. And I just want to thank you again for being here. And hopefully I will see you again soon. And until then, may you be peaceful. May you write or be creative. Bye-bye.